All right. So over the course of the past 3 semesters, this semester, I've built this jib crane for Mr. Mackey for LCAT to use for various productions that he does. A little about me. I've had a lot of engineering background. I've done robotics, the VEX robotics program for the past 4 years with Mr. Van Buren over here. And I've been to the World Championship 4 times, all 4 years, the first person in the club's history to ever do that. I currently work with a family friend at the Toy Box Storage Units, just another job to help me with my engineering background. I do a lot of mechanical with him. And obviously, I continue with that with a lot of RC construction and computer programming. It's just another hobby of mine. So the only project idea I've ever had was for this. It was the goal when we set last semester before I came in here. So I rearranged my schedule to accompany this. So the first blueprint I made was for this camera mount, basically to allow the camera to tilt and pan using motors and these turntable bearings using gears. So one of the kind of recycling things I did was I used this TV stand here from this actual TV here to mount the camera, which you see here, on the actual turntable to allow it to tilt. And then you have the final product over here. I also used some rubber bands because the camera is naturally front heavy, so it wants to fall forward and the motors can't comprehend that. And then we have just the general blueprint for this, the arm of this. I built this out of conduit pipe, generously donated by the DPW. So, and the janitor's help. I used their tools to measure, cut, and assemble this whole thing. And originally, this is what we were working with. We couldn't figure out what to use for the counterweight, so we just found a bucket, weighed about 40 pounds, and we filled it full of sand. Just stuck it on the end, and it seemed to work. And then after went outside for a day and painted the whole thing, apparently it disrupted a lot of teachers because the smell went everywhere. And then on the back here, we have a 40-pound counterweight that we bought. It was originally a dumbbell set, but the handle that was originally used for the dumbbell wasn't long enough, so I just used another piece of conduit pipe and clamped it down to the end, and it seems to balance out perfectly with this camera that we'll be using most of the time. And using various parts from Radio Shack that Mr. Mackey had bought me, I soldered this controller together that allows the camera to pan and tilt. And then this is a zoom controller, so I can zoom in and zoom out while the camera is 13 feet up in the air. And then mentors were Mr. Mackey. He allowed me to use his space here and some of his tools to help build this. Mr. Steve Hool was the one who generously donated all the conduit pipe for us, which saved us a lot of money. And Mr. Carey Emerzian, our custodian, who basically allowed me to use his drills, his vise, and his sawzalls to cut the pieces. Definitely the favorite part of this project was just building this. This is the first class in high school where I've actually gotten to do something hands-on and actually, collaborate with another teacher to do this. Financing, this was very cost-effective. I think total we spent about $50, and that was basically for just the controller and the dumbbell set on the back. And organization, we took lots of pictures, obviously, and when we needed free space to assemble, I would go into the back room or the garage, and so I went to stir this area for LCAT. And interpersonal, I don't know why we have that on there. Mr. Macarini told me to put that on there. And so after this, I plan to go to Western New England to do mechanical engineering for 4 years at their school. And that's really all I got. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Welch, Director of Student Services. In your first slide, you said something about RC construction.
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
Remote control.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll build, I'll take, servos and everything and build things that can fly.
Thank you. I just didn't.
All right, so actually, I'm gonna switch this over.
Oh, you can use the remote.
Yeah.
What was your biggest challenge?
Finding the time to put this together. I only have 84 minutes a day to do this, so I kind of had to work as fast as I can.
Sure.
I mean, getting the parts together was also a big help for Mr. Mackey. He has a very, very busy schedule, and I was really happy that he had the time to get me the parts.
Did anything fail along the way that you had to kind of re-engineer?
The tripod. It wasn't the tripod itself, but our center housing right here. Originally, we were going to have it just stand, like, not move at all, but that kind of limits the movement of this. So, with a lot of different work, we were able to create a housing inside to allow it to completely rotate on this inner cylinder. As you can see on the TV, we have the camera wired up so I can turn it. And then using the zoom controller, I can zoom in and out. And to make sure no one ever leaves the battery on so this thing dies in midair, I also wired up an LED switch. That's on and off.
How did you come up with the idea for creating this?
Well, originally I came into Mr. Mackey's room here, well first because I hadn't seen this thing after it has been rebuilt, and I was talking about community service, and he told me, you're really good at engineering, and I'm like, yes, and he's like, in the past I tried to build this jib crane, and of course I knew what that was. He's like, do you have any free time? You think you could take a class and build this for me? I'm like, I would love to do that. And so I rearranged my schedule and put this in for E-block and got to work.
So what would the applications of something like this be? How would something like this be used?
Well, it's already in use by a lot of like ABC 40 and news stations. It's used to get a very wide variety of shots, considering you can go over obstacles, below, and it's got a lot of range of movement compared to your normal camera that's just fixed to a tripod that can't move.
Did you use a lot of stuff you learned in robotics?
I did. Using the biggest thing was using from geometry the parallelogram bar, which having this bar fixed here and these bars being able to move, it keeps the camera level no matter what, so you don't have to readjust. Always stays level with the ground.
And what about the electronics, controller and...
The controller was just basic knowledge, didn't really do any of that in robotics, but using obviously the turntable bearings, I use those a lot in robotics for my other robot. And then probably the hardest part was trying to create a straight hole to go through, so Mr. Mackey helped me build this jig. We used using screws and wood. We marked out for every bar, we knew how far to stick it in, so we could drill it and then clamp it down, so we would have perfectly straight holes. Because the first time I tried, I just went right through, and they didn't go straight. They kind of went sideways, and the whole thing would not come together.
So what did you learn about yourself in doing this project?
The limitations of building is only in your mind. If you can think it, and you have the parts, you can make it. Any other questions? No? All right.